What nobody else has had is her side of things, and her side was so
The
important.
society part of it is key. If you don't understand that, you don't understand her. And if you don't understand her, you don't understand the whole thing.
So you got it. That's exactly my.
He was missing that. He just looked at the political side.
And you know when Martin Anderson told me early on when I met him at the Reagan Library one day, he said, "Well, what's your book about?" You know, and I said, "Well, it's really looking at the kitchen cabinet and Nancy's role and all of that." And he said, "Oh, that's a smart idea." He said, "Those of us who were on staff," he said, "you know, it was like a court. It was a pyramid, and Ronnie and Nancy were on top." And he said, "But revolving around at the top of the pyramid was this, you know, the social friends." He said, and those of us on the staff could never quite figure out what they did, how much their influence was, if he changed his opinion because he had spent a weekend at the Annenbergs, you know, in such and such a subject. He said it was very, you know.
The truth was, Reagan didn't like politics. I mean, see, I worked for Nixon and I worked for Reagan.
Right.
You could talk politics with Nixon like talking baseball.
Right.
He knew who the county chairman was. He knew everything.
Yes.
I rode from New York out to Westchester in a limousine with Reagan, and after the first 5 minutes, we had nothing to talk about because he's not interested in politics. Didn't care about it.
Right.
He cared about his performance.
I think what he cared about ideology,
Oh, he
in a
cared
sense,
about big picture
or the big
issues.
picture issues.
No
yeah.
question, but in terms of who the county chairman was, he could care less.
Yeah. And I think a lot of issues, actually, including probably abortion, I don't think he really cared about the nitty-gritty of it. I think it was mainly anti-communism and smaller government.
One of the interesting things is that in 76 and in 80, so many of those people you wrote about never wrote checks. Never got a dime from Merv Griffin, never a dime. I mean, it was very hard to raise money for Ronald Reagan because he was not the toast of Wall Street. And outside of the Salvatoris and the early
Jorgensens, those people, they kept
wrote
writing checks. Yeah.
But sort of her new friends.
Yeah. No.
So how's the book selling?
It said there's 70,000 copies out there. They printed 100, and they have almost no returns. So you know, it looks like they're selling, or they're keeping them anyway. You know, it's so hard to get a fix on anything in the publishing business, but I think it's doing well.
What's the plan?
Well, they'd like the manuscript by November, but it's not going to happen that way. It's going to be a little later than that because I've got to, you know, do Vanity Fair stuff. You can't support yourself on these so-called big advances from publishers unless you get millions. For, you know, biographies, you've got to travel.
Yeah.
I do most of my own research, but I have, you know, kids who go on the internet for me. You've got to. I mean, there's just so much. You got to pay for all the photos. You got to pay for all the provisions.
What's the focus of Volume 2?
Volume 2 is the same kind of focus. It's the White House years and the years afterwards, and how their marriage, her role in all of this. You know, it's very much like the story I did in Vanity Fair, which was 2 parts, and the second part, a lot about her role in the Russian thing. You know, I had lunch, one of our first lunches for the Vanity Fair article, 97. We talked about a lot of stuff, and then I said, you know, Nancy, would you say you've had any impact on policy? There was any area of policy that you influenced? Oh no policy. Oh no, I had nothing to do with policy. Then she paused and she said very softly, well, maybe the whole Russian thing. You know, the whole Russian thing. Mike DeVan Schultz. She worked hand in glove with Schultz, and you see that it's not. Schultz's memoirs really reveal that, but nobody sort of picked up on it.
See, the other thing that's interesting is that during the White House days, Nixon speaks very rarely to Reagan. He speaks to Nancy.
So that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for.
All the time. And often, Nancy will tell the president to pick up on the other line and listen to what the former president says.
This is great stuff. How do you know this firsthand, or has this been written in Nixon books? I'd never heard that anywhere.
Heard it from him.
We got to talk. You know what's interesting too? I found in her papers, which are scattershot and they're not organized, because she was not a memo writer, you know. But you'll see, like on the back of one of her schedules for the week, you know, they're in LA. On the back, it'll be scribbled by Mr. Dart called for Mrs. Reagan. Alfred Bloomfield called for Mrs. Reagan. Earl Jorgensen called Mrs. Reagan. What were they calling her for? You know, I mean, the myth is that she just related to the wives, but she sat next to the guys at dinner.
I think she had enormous influence on the cabinet selections, and Nixon figured that out. He wasn't working him, he was working her.
Oh, this is so interesting.
I mean, that's how Haig got the job, over a lot of misgivings.
Yes, Haig. I think I had that American like Nixon had something to do with that. But you know who also pushed very hard for Haig was Justin Dark.
Yeah.
And but there were a lot of misgivings. You're right. And Nancy wanted Schultz at first.
For the whole Russian thing, Nixon, who's intensely interested, is dealing with her.
Oh, this is.
Anyway,
we're on C-SPAN here. We're giving away our secrets. It's great to see you. Okay, and that note was so nice. I truly appreciate it.
Let's catch up in New York.
Okay.
Great.
Walter Houston was a liberal Democrat who loved FDR, came directly to Chicago and stayed with the Davises. Clearly must have been telling stories about, Roosevelt. Loyal Davis didn't say, "Get out of my house." I mean, Loyal Davis was perfectly capable of